So we ended up needing to save about $100,000 to provide the down payment from our end of the deal. Generally, when you're financing a deal like this, any lender is going to want you to come forward with about 30% of the overall cost of the deal. So in the price range we were looking in, that ended up being about $100,000. So when we first got married, we were pretty broke, and we were working 3 different jobs. I was working as a landscape contractor where I brought in, after taxes, about $20,000 a year. And Kimmy was working as a nanny where she made between $10,000 and $12,000 a year. And then we were just starting our video company that would bring in about $5,000 to $10,000 a year as well. I would say, as far as saving money goes, it was a bunch of little things. We would drive cars that were 10 years old or older that we could pay cash for and we knew would be reliable. We didn't eat out at restaurants a lot. If we couldn't afford something, we didn't buy it. We didn't put money on credit cards. We didn't go into debt. We always checked garage sales and thrift stores if there was something that we needed to see if we could get it cheaper there. So, like I said, it was a bunch of little things, but those little things add up over time. As a short-term rental, obviously, the income fluctuates a lot because it's very seasonal. It's dependent upon travel and the tourism season. So our summer and spring months, we would make a lot more than we would in the winter. But it averaged out once the mortgage was paid, once all expenses were paid, it averaged out to about $1,000 a month profit we would make. We lived in a couple different apartments in our time. The rent at the first apartment we lived in was about $900. And then the second apartment we lived in was closer to about $1,000, $1,100 a month. Over time, as the video business grew, we were able to focus more on that. And so Kimmy was able to stop her nanny job. And then eventually I was able to stop the landscaping as well to where we could just focus 100% on the video business. We faced our fair share of different troubles we had over the time of owning the house. And literally one day after our daughter was born, the sewage line backed up and we had to dig down like 6 or 8 feet outside the house to expose the sewage line so we could pull it apart, clean it out, and put it back together. We also had issues with guests just not obeying the rules. They would trash the place. There were times when we had to run things to guests at midnight that they needed. I had to go repair plumbing issues in the middle of a guest stay because the shower wasn't working. So all in all, it was a fun experience, definitely. So we happened to buy at the perfect time in regards to the Colorado housing market because it exploded right after we purchased it. We purchased the home for $154,000. We owned it for 4 years and ended up selling it for $270,000. And all those 4 years we had people in the house that were not only paying the mortgage, but were also paying us a profit as well. Not really. We knew from the time we purchased the house that it was going to be an investment property, so we already had that mindset. And we ended up loving the other apartments that we lived in. They were quirky. They were old apartments, so they didn't have their own air conditioning, so they'd get really hot in the summer. They were drafty in the winter. But we also just loved the character of them. We loved the neighborhoods they were in. Our first apartment was a 1-bedroom, but it was just in this awesome old house that ended up later being condemned, actually. But we thought it was really cool and cozy. And then the second apartment we lived in was over a garage, but it was great. Our daughter got her own room. It was on a really awesome historic street that we loved to take family walks up and down. So again, they were old apartments that had their quirks to them, but we absolutely loved living there, and it didn't really make it difficult not living in our house that we were renting out. Honestly, the hardest part is just the time itself, the time that it took to save. In your mind, you're ready to execute this plan, you're ready to be at step B, and it just seems sometimes like step A took so long. And it was good, it was nice that what happened during that time, but it was also difficult just to have the patience to wait for everything to fall into place. It's definitely still beans and rice season. As anyone will tell you, when you first purchase a business, there's some time that you have got to be prepared to not draw a paycheck off of that business. We had, thankfully, a cushion in savings to help us when we bought the business. With coronavirus and everything that happened, it completely took away all of our video work. and it made things a lot slower at the store, and we're still doing what we can to live simply and to abide by the same rules that we live by to get us to this spot. We don't have one, honestly. And honestly, that kind of just helps motivate us and focus us even more on the goal, because that's 100% of where we need to be. This is 100% of where we're going. We're actually in the process of getting all of our taxes figured out and paid right now, but it's going to be between 15 and 20%. So when we moved to Charleston and bought our house here, we put about $12,000 down. We would love to have done more than that, but we decided it was probably better to keep a little bit in the bank to help with getting the store, as well as something to help month to month while we were getting stuff built up. Honestly, the biggest point that we would want to make right off the bat is that we aren't experts at this by any stretch of the imagination. We have learned a lot in our time, but we've learned a lot of what we know through failing, through making mistakes. If we can do this, you can do this. It's really that simple. It's going to require sacrifice. It's going to require hard work. There will be times where you fail, but don't let that stop you, because all of that is just a necessary part of the journey that will end up making you successful. Thanks so much for watching. Please feel free to comment below with any questions you might have.